I am John Sweetland. I am the son of my father, John Richard Sweetland, and my mother, Patricia, who are both in heaven now. And there are no greater people that walk the planet except for Jesus, in my opinion. I am not the sharpest drawer in the knives. Wow. We had Chuck here this morning from Harvard. He's not here right now. He was here for the last session. But there was another Harvard graduate, a fellow by the name of Josh McDowell. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Josh McDowell, but Josh McDowell was a Harvard-trained attorney who devoted himself to basically disproving the gospel and then wound up getting saved through it. Wow, that's happened. That happens a lot to those attorneys. That's good. I really respect, I'm a big fan of the Ivy League, The ivy-covered buildings, right? That's what college is supposed to be like. You know, the really tough professors, remember the paper chase, right? But like I said, I'm not the sharpest drawer in the knives. I graduated in the bottom 25% of my class, and so the people in the Ivy League just want me to tell you that I didn't go to the Ivy League. So I didn't need to tell you that probably, but they wanted me to tell you that. So at any rate, my talk today is a talk that I've given to smaller community organizations. And the talk that I'm going to give today just begins with this talk. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you so that I can tell you something else. So bear with me here. But I do have an hour. That's good. You guys, okay. Yeah, I ain't going to get in anybody's lunch. No. The title of my talk is Fixing Detroit. How many people have been to Detroit? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I lived there for 2 years in the middle 70s. And I have a brother who was a forward communications sergeant in the Army, and he spent 2 tours over in Afghanistan. And when he came home, Mike came home after the second tour, he was so excited. He said, John, we are just so close in Afghanistan. We've developed over 1,600 miles of interstate-grade highway in the country. We have established 34 secondary, somewhere between our high schools and our colleges, secondary education places where young women can now be educated in. And they had developed in all 16 provinces a security force, kind of like a police academy to help maintain order. He said, we're just so close. We're so close. I said, Mike, that's awesome. I said, when you guys get things buttoned up over in Afghanistan, why don't you invade Detroit? Detroit, as some will know here, in 1960 was the wealthiest city in the Western Hemisphere. In 1960, Detroit, the city, was the wealthiest city in the Western Hemisphere. It was the heyday of the auto industry. Yeah, it was wealthier than Buenos Aires, Mexico City, Toronto, Montreal, New York, Los Angeles, California. On a per capita basis, there were 1.865 million people who lived in the city of Detroit. Not around the city of Detroit, in the city of Detroit. Motown was coming to the forefront as well. It was a happening place. Detroit was on a roll. In our country in 1960, the number of live births born into single-parent homes stood at 9%. In the little 3-county area, southern Indiana, where our business exists, that number was 4%. In Detroit in 1960, the number of live births born into single-parent homes was 11%. 1960. Flash forward to 2010, the U.S. Department of Health, in crunching the numbers from the 2010 census, came up with these numbers. In our locality in southern Indiana, Floyd, Harrison, and Clark County, The number had gone from 4% to 18% of all live births were born into single-parent homes. Nationally, it went from 9% to 23%. What do you think it went into Detroit? How did Detroit fare? What would you guess? Anybody? Anybody with a guess? When I ask this question in civic communities, or civic groups and communities, they will guess somewhere between 33% and 50%. That's a good guess. In Detroit in 2010, the number of live births born into single-parent households was 76%. There is no fixing Detroit. If you're curious, hey, maybe John, there's probably people here who were raised in a single-parent home. Right? I understand that. That happens. What are the outcomes for most individuals who are raised in a single-parent home? 63% of all the youth suicide comes from young men and women who were raised in single-parent homes. 71% of all high school dropouts are children from single-parent families. 80% of all violent rapists come from single-parent upbringings. 86% of all the youth in prison come from a single-parent household. And somewhere upwards of 90+% of all our nation's homeless originate from a single-parent household. Those are the numbers. I have the documentation here. I should have made a nice slide. Oh, you should take that down. I'm not going to bother with that. I'll get in trouble. Yeah. So how do you fix Detroit? If I were to survey this room, I would get chiefly 3 answers from people, variations on the same theme. 3 answers, and these are the same 3 answers that I get with any organization. They say, well, first of all, we need to have government stop incentivizing single-parent households. We need to do that. Oh, that's a good idea. Second, we need to teach in our schools about these outcomes. What happens in single-parent situations? And third, the church needs to recapture the moral high ground in our culture and begin to expound upon the virtues that keep families together. Oh, that's outstanding. But you don't mean to tell me that you think Detroit didn't have any of those things. Because I lived there for 2 years. I can tell you that Detroit has all those things. So my question then becomes, why didn't it work? Why didn't it stop? What happened? You don't want to know what the single-parent birth rate is now in Detroit. Just a little hint, it's more than 76%. You want to know what it is here in Louisville? Okay, I'll tell you. I didn't have 1960 numbers for Louisville, but I got these from the Jefferson County Health Department. In 2010, the percentage of children born, live births, born into single-parent homes was 31%, and today, well, in 2020, it is now 35%. But don't worry, because when it gets up to 50 or 60 or 70%, you and I, we won't be here. No. This is what happened to Detroit. 1.865 million people lived in the city of Detroit in 1960. Now, it's south of 600,000. A third of the people live there today that lived there in 1960. 2/3 left. Yeah, we'll go somewhere else. Because our politicians don't work, our schools don't work, and I'm not here to beat up on the church, but quite frankly, men and women, the church doesn't work either. Oh, why is that? Why is that? Those three things are institutions. The prime directive of any institution isn't fixing problems, did you know? The prime directive of every institution is the preservation of the institution. That comes first. Some institutions exist to take care of problems, right? How long have we been fighting a war on poverty in this country? Since 1964? How about the war on drugs, sometimes in the early 1970s? How about the war on terrorism? We've been fighting these wars for decades, and we ain't making any headway. We keep throwing our money, our tax dollars, to these institutions, hoping that they'll take care of the problem, but they don't. They haven't, and they will not. There is an institution that is worth your investment. It's the first institution. It's the institution that became an institution when the world was perfect. It's the only institution that precedes the fall of man. You see, government, education, and even the church, those three institutions exist because there is sin in the world. But this institution I'm about to describe to you existed before there was sin. It's the perfect institution, and it's called the family. Marriage is the perfect institution. When God created it, He said it was very, very good. Fixing Detroit isn't what we're here to discuss today. But I've told you this story about Detroit to motivate you to listen to what it is I'm about to tell you. Here, I want to share a couple of scripture with you. The first one's found in Luke chapter 18, verses 1 through 7. It's a familiar story. It's the story of the unjust judge. Jesus is telling a parable, and he says he spake a parable to them that men always ought to pray and never to lose heart, saying, there was in a certain city a judge who did not fear God, nor had regard for man. Now there was a widow in that city, and she came to him, saying, get justice for me from my adversary. And the judge would not for a while, but afterwards he said within himself, though I do not fear God, nor regard man, yet because this widow continues to trouble me, I will avenge her, lest by her continually coming she weary me. You know what that's a parable about? It's a parable about men's institutions and the corruption that exists in them. You'll note that never in Jesus' parable is it discussed what exactly the problem was. We don't even know if this woman had a legitimate claim. And we certainly understand a couple of things about this word was used earlier, the secularization of the institution, where the judge who sits at the top of the institution says, I don't even fear God. I certainly don't have any regard for man. That describes our institutions today. You know what's funny to me? Is this. I was telling this story a little earlier. I used to coach a cross-country team, little kids, right? Junior high, high school guys. And the team that I coached was a homeschool team. And so during the course of the season, I'd run these kids, and then I would preach the gospel to them afterwards, right? We'd talk about it. Then after our season concluded, AAU began, which was a consolidation of all the runners in our area. So kids would come from the public schools, and they'd show up, and little Grant Vellinger, 12 years old, one day took this other fella aside and shared the gospel with him. And the kid believed. I didn't know. Grant didn't tell me. But that night, I got a call on the telephone from this little guy's mom. And she called and says, "Are you Coach Sweetland?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Do you coach a kid named Grant?" I said, "Yes, Grant Vellinger. He's a kid that runs with us during the year." "Oh, well, I just need you to know that he shared the gospel with my son today after practice." I was just like, uh-oh. What's coming next, right? She was happy. It was great. Everybody was happy. You know what she told me, though, that her son said to her? This is the thing that I hear business people say to themselves. "Mom, is it legal for him to do that? Is it legal to talk about Jesus to your coworkers in the workplace?" I can tell you what, Grant Vellinger didn't care. You know, there was a question here in the keynote address this morning. It came from a young man, Gustav Shamara. He was sitting right over here, and he runs a gym, right? And he has a distinct Christian culture that exists in that gym, and 4 of his clients decided they didn't want anything to do with that. You know what I wanted to tell him? That's good. That's good. You keep going. And you keep going with confidence. Confidence. There were 2 little caterpillars. They were feasting on the lower branches of a tree. One was a very confident caterpillar. The other one was very timid. And the confident caterpillar said to the timid caterpillar, "Hey, let's go up into the upper branches of the tree where the leaves are more tender. We'll feast there." And so they went up there. They decided to go up there. When they got out onto the branch, the timid caterpillar looked back and he saw a huge spider starting to crawl out after him on this branch. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, we're going to get eaten alive up here." And the confident caterpillar said, "Hey, I know exactly what we'll do. Come with me." And he ran them both out to the end of that branch. And the timid caterpillar says, "He's going to catch us. We've got no place to go." And just then, the confident caterpillar began gnawing away at the branch, way up in this tree. And he says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Just hang on." Pretty soon, the caterpillar bit through that branch just as the spider was coming out there, and that twig came all the way down. And that confident caterpillar was steering that thing all the way between the leaves and came down all the way down and landed it right there on the lower branch in between. He says, "Man, how did you do that?" The timid caterpillar asked. The confident caterpillar said, "I'm the only one left in this forest who knows how to drive a stick." Okay, all right. It works with older people. That joke works a lot better with older people. Confidence. How many here are business owners? Raise your hand. How many folks here work in an organization where you have people that work underneath you, a significant number of people that work underneath you? Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Where do you find your confidence? I graduated in the bottom quarter of my class in high school. And when I went into the work world, my father thought it might be best to try and get me involved in a business situation. We contacted a franchisor, and the franchisor came and visited with us, and among the things that the franchisor did was he administered an 11-section business acumen personality inventory of me. I failed 8 of the 11 categories, and they wouldn't sell us the franchise. They did. So in 1995, 5 years after my wife and I moved down here from Chicago, neither of us are from here. We don't have any family here. And we found out something very quickly, that if you're not from here and you have no family here, you're not ever really going to be from here. We were always on the outside of the fishbowl looking in. But it was during that time, when my company that I'd worked for transferred me down here to work, that I got a desire to run my own business. You see, for years, I had been managing people. I've been managing people to the standard of my employer, who, as it worked out, and this was never said directly, had me managing grown men as though they were sixth graders. And do you know what happens when you manage men, grown men, like they're sixth graders? They exactly do that. They act like sixth graders. And I thought, this isn't how you do it. This can't be how you do it. But everybody was doing it. The culture was that way. And then God gave me this. You remember Corinth in the Bible? Yeah. Corinth, thriving place to be. I'm not going to belabor this point, but I want to tell you that what was normal in Corinth in the first century was pedophilia, prostitution, and slavery. Oh, there was a bunch of other stuff. Hey, you want to know about those three things? Those three things still exist today. But you know what the difference is? In Corinth in the first century, not only did those three things exist, but those three things were encouraged. All of it. It wasn't just accepted in the society, it was encouraged in the society. But do you know what happened? The gospel of Jesus Christ came to Corinth, and it didn't change overnight. But if you go to Corinth today, or Detroit today, you're going to find out an interesting dynamic. That all three of those things, if they're not already illegal, are all frowned upon in our society and in Corinth. Do you know why? Yes, of course you know why. That's the influence of the gospel. And do you know who was peddling the influence of the gospel in Corinth back in the first century? It wasn't business leaders, and it wasn't the church. It wasn't some big church that they had in Corinth. It was a bunch of know-nothing garbage men who had very little else to do. Do you remember what Paul wrote to the church at Corinth? He said, when we came there, the people that were coming to Christ, they weren't noble, they weren't wealthy, and they weren't strong. God says he chose the beggarly things, the weak, to bring to nothing the things that are. This is the confidence that we have. Not in balance sheets, not in profit and loss statements, but in a creator God who has everyone's, in this room, best interests at heart. He delights in the prosperity of his children. This isn't going to turn into a prosperity gospel thing, believe me. When I embarked on my business, I met with a local businessman named Jim Robinson, who ran Robinson Nugent over in New Albany, and a fellow by the name of Jack Forbes. And the first question that they asked me in my interview with them, they were retired executives, and I wanted some advice about how to be in business because, as I said, I failed 8 of the 11 sections and graduated at the bottom quarter of my class. The first question that they asked was, why do you want to be in business? And I'll never forget my answer. I said, because I don't want to be rich. I don't want to be rich. That was a lie. That was a lie. Again, in Luke's gospel, it reads thus. You'll remember this story. Then Jesus spoke a parable. The ground of a certain man, rich man, yielded bountifully. So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater barns, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have made many goods laid up for yourself for many years. Now take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul will be required of you, and then whose will those things which you have provided become? So it is with he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. I'm not a rich man by the world's standards. But it is incumbent upon all of us in this room to use whatever influence that God has given us in whatever abilities and talents and traits. And I like what Lee Webb said earlier, using that for his glory, for other people, not for ourselves. You see, men and women, there are only two things that leave this planet: God's Word and men's souls. That's it. And if you want to be rich toward God, that's where we need to invest our time, talent, and treasure. There's a problem. You've got to be profitable. Our business began 30 years ago with 24 customers. Today we serve over 30,000 households, and we have about 78% of the market share in southern Indiana. We're a very small fish in a very small pond, but we're the only fish. And that didn't happen because of me. Happened in spite of me, because my confidence is found in a loving Creator who has at his heart the ministry of his word to everyone. His kingdom is going out. Do you want to fix Detroit? Do you want to fix Louisville? Do you want to fix southern Indiana? The institution to focus on is the family. Now, you might well imagine we employ over 50 people in our organization. Those men work with me. You will never hear me say that I have 50 people that work for me. I am not that arrogant. Nobody works for me. I work for me and my family, and so do those men. They work with me, and I work with them. And I know it's just semantics, but words have power, which is why I'm sharing from God's Word with you this morning. Our institutions are corrupted. The gold and silver is corroded, and it speaks out against us. I don't know if you've read James 5, but James 5, the first 7 verses there in James 5, is what God used to call me into service in business. Woe to you that are rich, for your gold and your silver is corroded, and it speaks out against you. It testifies against you. The wages that you have withheld from those who labor in your fields have cried out to the Lord. Not the guys. It says the wages that you have withheld by fraud cry out. That's pretty powerful. Hey, but you want to know something? I already told you that I'm not rich. So that verse isn't applying to me, is it? Right? Who's rich? Anybody here rich? Don't raise your hand. I don't even embarrass anybody. The passage tells us who's rich. If you have people laboring in your fields, you are rich. I have 50 people that labor. And God has tasked me and called me to make certain that they flourish. Do you know what a husband is, men? Do you know where that word comes from? It's an agricultural word. You've heard of husbandry. Those are people who raise cattle. and other animals. To be a husband means, and to be involved in husbandry, means to create an environment in which those who exist in it can flourish. That's what it is to be a husband. That's what's called God's commission to every man. My father once said to me when I was younger, I would watch him and my mom in the morning. They weren't morning people. Mom would fix him breakfast. He'd read the paper, and at the appointed time, he'd reach down, grab his briefcase, fold up the newspaper. Mom would grab the plates away from him, take them over to the sink. They'd go around and meet at the front door. And Dad would lean in and kiss my mother on the lips and say, "I love you, Pat." And then he left. I saw that every morning while I was in high school, every morning. And by the time I got to be about a senior in high school, I became a little interested in women. I was watching this. And I caught my dad out on the front stoop, going down the sidewalk to the car. And I said, "Hey, Dad, I got to ask you something. You do that every morning, that little ritual with Mom. What, doesn't it lose its meaning? Doesn't it become robotic?" He just kind of smiled, looked at me. He says, "See that door, son? Every morning I walk out that door, and 8 hours from now, I'm not guaranteed that I'm going to come back in through that door. I want your mother to know exactly how I feel about her. There's something else, son, that you need to know. In this life, you don't get 8 hours from now. You don't get 8 minutes from now. All you get in this life is right now. And you need to learn to do the right thing right now." What is the right thing? Well, we are very fortunate seated here. We have a loving Father who has invested resources into each one of our lives to bring us to where we are today. And He tells us what the right things are. He's not short on doing that. And the man who finds a wife finds a good thing. That's a right thing. You might well imagine that most of the people that come to work with me come from single-family homes. They do. I'm going to tell you something. When I sit down with these people and we discuss salary, they say, "Oh, how do I get ahead here?" I said, "It's just one word. It's responsibility." Right? Are you responsible? And they'll tell me, "Well, I show up for work every day." Man, that's awesome. You've got 70% of the workforce beat. "Well, I do my job." "Well, yeah, I know you do your job. I pay you to do your job. What else have you got?" "Well, what else is there?" "I'm glad you asked." "Tell me, what's your credit score?" "Well, I don't have one." "You have a high school diploma?" "I've got my GED." "You got a college degree?" "No." "You got any college credits?" "No." "You married?" "No." "Got any kids?" "Maybe." Yeah, I said, see, all those things, and there are plenty more, I've got a whole list. All those things tell me about the level of responsibility that a person has in their life. And you know what I've learned being in business? Because they'll ask this, "Well, what do any of those things have to do with the job?" I said, "I'll tell you exactly what they have to do with the job. If you are responsible in your personal life, you'll be responsible when you're here. Because responsibility isn't a switch that you flip, it's who you are." And here's what I will tell you about young men who come to us who have had two parents, as opposed to the people who come to us who have one parent. The two-parented raised children are head and shoulders above the single-parent children in terms of responsibility. That's the first thing I want to tell you. Here's the second thing I want to tell you. All of those young men who are in single-family homes, single-parent families, every one of them wants to be responsible. It's just no one told them how. And number 3, when you tell young men who are in single-parent households who want to be responsible how to be responsible, they flourish. Yeah, you could check us out on Google. Sweetland Ltd, 4.4 star rating. I don't know what that means. I'm told it's good. I had a competitor, had an app, and he said, how do you do this? I said, what? He says, it's 4.8. That was an app that organized all these different social media sites. 4.8. What's 4.8? He says, it's 4.8 stars out of 5. How do you do that? I don't know. We pick up trash and we send people a bill. What do you want me to tell you? I wasn't going to tell him the secret sauce. No. Every Wednesday, we have a meeting. And we talk about how to maintain your truck, how to drive your route, how to be safe. And then we talk about what Jesus needs to say to you. I've had a couple guys not want to listen to that, right? Out of 50, maybe it's 4. I don't know. But I just keep going. And I challenge them with stories like I told you about what my father said to me about him and my mother's interaction there at the door. I tell them that stuff. I tell them this. I tell them that the measure of a man is his ability to make and then keep the promises that he makes, because that's who God is. It's a virtue called faithfulness. I teach it. I don't judge them. Shoot, some of the most well-paid guys in our workforce, I don't know if they're buying any of what I'm selling. But I've baptized 2 full families, and I've done 4 marriages of the young men that work with us. I'm asked all the time, as I'm sure you are, how's business? Right? The standard response is, oh, it's great. You know, things are going well. It's positive, positive, positive. I don't think our business is that great. It's small. Our competitors could buy and sell us thousands of times over. We're nothing that significant. But when people ask me how my business is, those are the stories that I tell of the young men who come to work with us, who've been kicked around, mistreated, disabused of any of their dignity or virtue, and have been bereft of any talk of virtue. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years. And do you know why the church, and do you know why the government, and do you know why the education system doesn't take on? Because nothing changes real quick. If you want to fix Detroit, if you want to fix Louisville, if you want to fix Southern Indiana, none of that's going to happen until men and women like us here in this room get off our hind ends and go find those people. Go find them. That's what Jesus said. Go. Go and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And lo, I'm with you always. Who's with you always? He's not some guy. He's the creator God of the universe. He's the one. He's got your back. He's got your front. He's got both your sides. He's got your up and your down. Remember the story of the unjust judge? Remember that? Talked about that earlier. Yeah, he says, but because this widow troubles me, I'm going to give her what she wants, lest she wearies me, right? That's cool. But that's not the point of the parable. Jesus says, then the Lord said, hear what the unjust judge just said. He's talking to his disciples. He's talking to us. Listen to what the unjust judge said. Do you hear what he said? He doesn't care about God. He doesn't care about people. He just cares about his own comfort. And he's corrupt. Verse 7 says, and shall God not avenge his own children who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? Jesus said, I tell you that God will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man returns, will he find faith on the earth? You see, what Jesus is disabusing his disciples of is putting their trust and their faith in the institutions of man. He's called us to believe him in every word. And he says, go, therefore, into all the world, make disciples. I'm telling you, people, from experience, that young men and young women who are raised in single-parent homes, they're the key. They're the ones that we must go to. But let me warn you, it's dirty there. And it takes a long time. But lo, Jesus said, I am with you till the end of the age. Thank you so much for your kind attention this morning.